What's up, guys? Welcome back for today's lecture for Thursday, the 23rd, I believe. We'll have a Zoom meeting today, 2 o'clock. Um, just checking in. I want as many people there as possible. We're starting to slip a little bit in uh, number of people, answering the essential question each day. I've been checking, and there's quite a few that haven't kept up on it very well. And I realize pointing that out here is kind of pointless because obviously the people that are answering the question are the ones that are here listening to these lectures, and the people that aren't are not probably listening to these lectures. So, but we will have a quick Zoom meeting, just like the others. Won't take terribly long. We'll get all that stuff figured out. Yesterday, we talked about the Warsaw Pact, and then we talked about some of the successes and failures of Truman's containment plan, mentioning Japan and the Philippines as successes, and then China as a fail. But we're going to get into Korea today, and Korea is difficult. You can't really pin it down as either a success or a failure. So to break it down, Korea has been a Japanese territory all this time. And after World War II, Korea becomes independent, but both of the Allied powers, being the Soviet Union and the United States, they want different things for Korea. So they decide the best way to go about this is just split Korea basically in half. The easiest way to do that was to divide it along the 38th parallel. If you guys know latitude and longitude on a globe or on a map, latitude goes up and down like a ladder, and it measures distance from the equator. And this line is 38 degrees north of the equator, and it's about the closest thing to splitting Korea in half. So North Korea becomes a Soviet-controlled, or not, they're not controlled, but influenced country, and South Korea becomes an American-influenced country. And things seem fine, but no one in Korea is satisfied on either side. They all want a unified Korea, but they want it their way. South Korea wants a unified democratic and capitalist Korea, and North Korea wants a unified communist and dictator ruled Korea. So both countries have governments put in place by their by their superior, meaning the U.S. for South Korea and Soviet Union for North Korea. The U.S. puts in a man named Syngman Rhee in charge, and North Korea puts in Kim Il Sung. So I guess I forgot to mention this before I change slides. How the war develops is North Korea decides to act upon their desire for a unified Korea, and they invade South Korea. They move past 38th parallel, and they actually move pretty far south. They get to Pusan, here down in the southern tip of South Korea, and make a lot of progress. And the American forces and the South Korean forces don't have a whole lot of success originally. Then the South Korean and American forces decide to plan an amphibious assault on North Korea by going through the waters and basically encircling them. So they decided to get on boats and come around here and re-enter the land and kind of surround them and trap them. The North Korean army is able to escape, but they have to retreat back across the border. They've been kicked out of South Korea. And after that, General MacArthur, who was leading the defense of the American and South Korean forces, MacArthur is told to stay back, don't pursue, stay on the south side of 38th parallel. And MacArthur disobeys that order, and he pursues the North Korean army, and they are pushed back all the way to the Yalu River. They end up getting as far into North Korea as North Korea originally got into South Korea. Now, it sounds like they're about to take over North Korea and unify it under a democratic government. But now that China is communist, they feel like this American force that's moving towards their border, which that's what this country here on the other side of North Korea is China. They feel threatened. So Chinese military gets involved and they push the American and South Korean forces back. And the American South Korean forces have to retreat back across the 38th parallel. And the fighting continues there for a couple years, but no progress is made. It turns into a war of attrition. It basically turns into like trench warfare was for World War I. And nothing changes. After the Korean War is over, everything went back to how it was before. 38th parallel was still the dividing line. There was no unified Korea, and it did nothing but, intensify Cold War relations. The Soviets were helping North Korea, just like America was helping South Korea. It took place for 3 years. Interesting fact, despite a ceasefire being agreed to end the fighting, no peace treaty was ever signed. They never did agree on a treaty. And so technically the Korean War is still going on, even though no guns have been fired in 50 years. It wasn't until I think April of 2018 when the leaders of the two Korean countries decided to meet and talk about the possibility of signing a treaty. But still nothing has happened. The two Koreas are technically in what's known as a frozen war. It's not even a Cold War, it's frozen. There's nothing going on. But it's still technically considered a war because there was never a peace treaty signed. So that's the very basics of the Korean War. So was there a winner? South Korea is still free, so in that sense, containment succeeded. But North Korea was still communist. So if we're looking purely at the goal of containment, then yeah, I guess you could say that the Korean War is a success because you're trying to stop the spread of communism, and communism did not spread. It was already in North Korea, and they attempted to spread it to South Korea, and it didn't work. But MacArthur's charge into North Korea ultimately fails. So I would keep that thought that I just talked about in mind, maybe jot it down, because that's a very possible opinionated essay question. I'm not saying for sure, but that's a very possible or short answer question on a test. So just keep that in mind. But just because this war doesn't change any results. That doesn't mean there wasn't any casualties, or that doesn't mean there weren't any consequences. Both North and South Korea were pretty heavily damaged. South Korea had its major cities pretty well burned to the ground and decimated in Seoul and Incheon and Busan. They were very badly damaged by the North Korean invasion, and North Korea, really all over, got bombarded by uh, jets and bombers. Like North Korea got more bombs dropped on it in the Korean War than all countries combined in World War II. That's a lot. Now they're not atomic bombs, granted. They're just regular uh, regular bombs. I don't know what they're called. Uh, Dropped from planes, but so the damage wouldn't have been as bad in Korea as it was in Japan from the atomic bombs, but still the sheer number of explosives dropped in North Korea was huge. And it's only outdone in the future by Vietnam and Cambodia. But at this point in time, it's the worst aerial bombardment any country had ever seen. And like I said, they're still separate, and reunification talks have begun, but progress is very, very slow. There's no rush to it. And really, at this point, the only thing the peace treaty would truly do is just, show goodwill. I mean, they haven't been really conflicted lately. They're not allies by any means. They're still pretty tense with each other, but they're not on the verge of warfare or anything. This actually leads to, I think I might have talked about it last year in world history, because I think it's an interesting, kind of crazy story about the axe murder incident in Panmunjom, which is just south of Seoul in South Korea, when American and South Korean forces wanted to cut down a tree that North Korea had claimed was planted and nourished by Kim Il Sung, the original leader of North Korea. And, they, North Korean forces didn't take kindly to that. And as the American and South Korean guys were cutting down the tree, the North Koreans attacked them, took their hatchets, and basically killed, I think, two of the American, or one American and one South Korean with the hatchet. And that happened, I think, 1976, and that raised tension a lot and freaked people out. And American and South Korean forces were ready to invade North Korea and relaunch that war. And they went back to the tree like 2 days later with a huge army behind them. And they cut it down, and North Korean forces had moved in ready to fight, but when they saw the size of the American and South Korean army, they just stood there and watched. And they watched the tree not get cut down to the ground, like to a stump. They cut it and left it about 6 feet tall and just left it to look really frail and ugly. It was meant to be an insult. As a stump, you just kind of forget about it, or at least it, I guess, kills it with some dignity. Leaving it looking just kind of frail and rotted out and pathetic was meant to send a message and intimidate. But that happens in 1976. But it's a crazy event. And this is just a more modern map. The borders changed a little bit. That's mostly just through the demilitarized zone. That land there, the land between the former border and the current border, it's not very consequential. It's rough terrain. It's not farmland, which ultimately is what is valuable. And that was agreed upon after the Korean War to ensure that MacArthur didn't invade North Korea again. And these are the two leaders of the first leaders of Korea. So Kim Il Sung ruled North Korea as a communist dictator. He is I can't remember if he's the grandfather or great grandfather of Kim Jong Un, who's the current leader of North Korea today. Actually, there's rumors that he's battling illness and near death. But again, because they're so closed off and isolated, none of that information is made clear to the outside world. So no one really knows his situation. And then South Korea's leader was Syngman Rhee. And Rhee was, very popular in America. He was very receptive to American ideas and help, and really dependent on America. He's basically an American puppet. So American government loved him, but he was probably every bit as corrupt and oppressive as any communist leader, other than maybe Stalin. But America doesn't care about that, especially during this time. You can be the worst guy in the world, but if you fit our ideology and if you help push our global agenda, then we'll back you. We'll help you out. I mean, that's kind of how Osama bin Laden and Al Qaeda rose to power, was because we assisted them because they were fighting the Soviets in the 70s and 80s. And we're like, sweet, you hate the Soviets? Cool, here's all these guns. But I'm getting ahead of myself there. That's a whole other conversation. So here's our essential question. What's the dividing line between North and South Korea called? Real simple. Just like all these questions I tend to ask, I try and make them real simple. So just add that to the document. We'll have one more tomorrow, and then you'll turn it in with all 5 answers on it, hopefully. So Zoom meeting tomorrow, or sorry, not tomorrow, today, Thursday, at 2 o'clock. And we'll talk, we'll chit chat, and we'll get any questions or anything ironed out and taken care of. So, all right, guys, that's it. Have a terrific day.